want to welcome you all to today's presentation, Intro to Excel. And what I'm going to do today is tell you just a very brief amount of who I am and what gives me the right to be here. And what we'll talk about today is the parts of the Excel screen. And what's really nice about that is that for part of the screen that I show you, it's going to be almost the same in all the other Microsoft Office applications. And that's good because it cuts down on the learning curve. We're also going to talk about grouping. And if any of you are old enough to remember carbon paper, it's kind of like virtual carbon paper. And then I'm going to show you some shortcuts because everybody would like to be able to do things in 1 or 2 keystrokes instead of 5 or 6. So I'm going to show you some of those. And the meat and potatoes of this is going to be calculations. We're going to show you the sum function and some of the other calculations. And there's over 300 calculations in Excel. And I say over 300 because I have 3 different Excel textbooks in my bookcase. And each one of them has a different number of how many I'm sorry, it's the functions. Okay, the next one. Okay, calculations, plain ordinary, mathematical, add, subtract, divide, multiply. Okay, on functions, we get a little bit more into some of the other things that you can do. And as I said prematurely, there's over 300 functions. All 3 of the textbooks I had a number over 300. So I guess I'm safe by saying that. I'm also going to show you some charting because what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And charting is very easy in the later versions of Excel. In the original versions, it was kind of difficult, but now it's really, really easy. And then if I have time, I'll show you the tricks and tips and tricks summary sheet that I have. In 2 places, I have my email address, which you can write down if you want a copy of anything that I do today, the practice file or the tips and tricks summary sheet. So my name is Susan Spitzberg, and I've been teaching 30 plus years now. I've been at Rasmussen University for 10 years. Actually, I've been there 11, but the first year I was in the classroom, and then after that, I got switched to online. I've taught the computer applications class, which is Excel, PowerPoint, Word, hardware, software, and internet. And also, mostly what I teach is the 6-week Excel class. So I've had a lot of experience doing this. One of my other hats that I have worn is technical writing as a subject matter expert, so that whenever one of these 2 classes, the computer apps or the Excel, needs to be updated, I get a chance to do that. So that's very exciting. It also keeps me on the ball with all new things that come out. I recently started teaching also at Bellevue University in Nebraska. And it's very interesting to see how the different schools handle different things online. When I worked full-time, I was a help desk analyst, tech support. So I always worked full-time and I taught part-time. And now I love what I'm doing. I'm semi-retired and just teaching. And as you can see here, I was online instructor of the quarter 2 different times. So if you want a copy of the file that I'm using tonight, it'll be blank so that you can fill in your own stuff. Send me an email and
yeah,
I will.
Little bag here with an arrow.
Okay, would you please mute yourself? Please mute yourself. So if you want a copy of the file and the tips and tricks summary sheet, just email me at. Okay, would you please mute yourself in the lower left-hand corner? So you're not coming through and I'm not fighting with you for volume here. So my email address is susan.spitzberg. Be sure that you use a Z in Susan at rasmussen.edu. And I can give you either a copy of today's the Excel file and the tips and tricks or one or the other, depending on what you want. Okay, so let's get started. Close. Okay, we don't need that one right now. We need this one. All right. So I have an Excel sheet here that I have put some things on the tabs down here. And the first thing I want to do is to go over the parts of the screen. And I'm going to start with the tab names here, but then I'll go back to the QA toolbar after I've done some of this. So you have a ribbon here that is divided into sections, and each section has a name. And within each section, there are things that you can do that are like the section, like the name. So in here we have font. So these would all be buttons that would help you with font. And if you point to them, they will tell you a keyboard shortcut, and they will also give you 1 or 2 lines of description on what it does. So if I have, if I'm in somewhere that has text and I click on the B, I will bold the text. I will italicize the text. I will underline the text from here. And when you start out, you're going to be spending most of your time on the Home tab. And right about up to this section, all of the Microsoft Office applications have pretty much the same thing here. So once you know how to bold in Excel, you can bold in Word, PowerPoint, and almost just about any other Office application. So as you can see, we have different things here. Okay. Okay. So if you wind up using something, that's farther down, like the data tab or page layout tab, you can make it easier to find without having to go to this tab. And the way that you would do that is to use the QA toolbar up here. And with the QA toolbar, QA stands for quick access. All right. What it allows you to do is to put these buttons from here up there. So like if I had bold up here and I was over in page layout, I could still bold by clicking on the bold up here. And the way that one of the ways that we can do that is the things that are most common are on this list. So if you hit the down arrow, you can see that I have print preview, and there were a couple of things that were automatically on there, save and auto save. So if I wanted to, I could put, excuse me, spelling on here. Okay. And so that would put it on there. If I wanted to take it off, I would just click on something that has a check mark, and that's going to take it off. To get some of these things that are here, if you just right click the button and say add to quick access toolbar, it's right up there. And then it's over here so that if I go way over here, I can still be bolding without having to go back to the Home tab. If I use it for a certain project, which I had a project where I had to be clicking way down here and then way over here. And so I put it up there, the button up there for the project. But when I was through with the project, I didn't want it up there. So if I want to take it off, I can right click and just say remove from quick access toolbar. You can also put an entire section up there if you want. If you find that you need all of these things, but your project has you way down here, if you just right click in the area and say add group to quick access toolbar, then it adds the group. And if you click on what the button that went up there was, it will show you everything. And then if you're done, you can right click and say remove from quick access toolbar. So it's a neat little trick. It kind of keeps things organized for you and makes it so that you don't have to keep jumping all over the ribbon. Now, underneath the ribbon, we have the name box and we have the formula bar. And I'll be going back to those later on. Underneath that, you have your columns, and columns are designated by letters. So we would call these column A, column B, column C. And when you get to Z, they start all over again with A, B, A, C, and then eventually wind up with X, F, D. Okay, so the good thing is you're never going to run out of columns. And we do call them that. So if I'm in something with this, I would say I'm in column D. Now the rows have numbers. Okay, so they would be row 1, row 2, and they go all the way down to over 1 million. So again, you are never going to run out of rows. Okay. Now when a column and a row intersect, we call that a cell. And you can tell what cell you're in because it has a thick border over it, and also the cell has a name, or actually it's an address, and it is the column letter and the row number. So we would be in cell D3, and you can tell, as I said, because it has a border, but in the name box here, it also will tell you what cell you're in. So if you can see as I jump around, you can see that the cell address changes. You can also tell because, but this doesn't show up as much as it did on earlier versions, that the column letter and the row number are also kind of shaded. Okay, so, but they used to be a different color altogether, and they stopped doing that. But as you can see, as I monkey around, okay, and the formula bar we're going to get back to when I go into a different tab. Now, under that, you have your worksheet tabs, and you have different sheets, so you can have all kinds of different information in your Excel file, and it's not touching the others. So like, for instance, if you had a budget, you could have January, February, March, April, and so on like that. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you have some quick views. We are in the normal view. You can also go into page layout or page break preview. I don't use those very much. Some of the things you do will throw you into page layout automatically. And on the lower right-hand corner, you have a zoom control. And if you're in the middle, it's set for 100%. If you need to make it bigger or smaller, you can just move this tab. So you can see. But when you print, it will all come out as 100%. And then you can also go to the view and change the zoom from here to one of these settings. And I'll just put it back to 100%. There's also 100% up here because that's the one that's used the most. So one of the things that I want to show you is grouping, because you might want to group 2 or 3 or more tabs because you have information that's going to be on all 3 of them. It's kind of like carbon paper. If any of you are old enough to remember carbon paper, this is kind of like virtual carbon paper. And I would group these. I'm going to group these, but later I'm going to show you how to do it with a budget because it's really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm in the tab. Oh, and by the way, if you want to change the tab names, because they come in sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, all you need to do is double click and just type over it and then just hit enter or go out of it, and it will change the name for you. So I'm going to start in Let's, and I'm going to hold my control key down, and I'm going to hit on click group and click these. And so what happens now is anything that I have on the tab that says Let's is going to go on the tab for group and on the tab of these. And you can tell that you have these grouped because the group ones have changed color and they have this little line across them. So if it's the active sheet, it won't have that little line, but the other sheets will. You can also tell by going up into the title bar, which you can't really see right now, maybe, I'm not sure, but in the title bar, it will say group in brackets. So there's a couple of ways that you can get out of that, because once you put in the information that you want on all 3, you want to ungroup them so that anything you put on something doesn't go on the other 2. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. If these are the only tabs you have, and you've added, depending on your version, you will start with 1 tab or 3 tabs when you open a new file. And if you want to add tabs, you just click on this plus, and they also call them sheets. So we call them sheets, we call them tabs, same thing. But if you wanted to add one, you could just click here. So if you only have these 3 sheets here, you can right click and select Ungroup Sheets. All right. If not, if you have more than sheets that are not grouped, you can just hit one of the other ones that's not in the group, and then they will see they are no longer grouped because they're back to the gray color again. Okay, so that is grouping and the parts of the screen. And now I want to show you some shortcuts that are built in, and these will make your life easier too. So we have the days of the week, and then we have some dates. Now, when I click on something, if you notice in the lower right-hand corner, there's like a little square wart. And if you point to it with your mouse pointer changes to a skinny plus. See, when I'm away from it, I've got a fat white plus, and then I've got a plus with arrows on each side. But here it's just a skinny black plus with no arrows. This is called the fill handle. And for these things, if you keep your finger down on the right mouse button and you just drag across, look what happens when I let go. I have the days of the week already in there, okay? And it is case sensitive. You notice that they were all lowercase. And here I have Sunday, and it's all uppercase. and it will put everything in all uppercase. And when it runs out of them, it will start all over again. So these are nice little tricks that you can do. And we can also do that with dates. Now, if you don't have the year on here, it just assumes that it's the current year. And there, I could go with the dates. And when I get to January 31st, it will start with February 1st. And if the date that you're using is a leap year, it will add February 29th to it. And if it's a different year and it doesn't, then it will skip right over it. And then you can just do this with the months of the year also, just like that. So these are a couple of shortcuts. They're great to know. And if you take an intermediate class, teacher will show you how to set up your own so that when you hit the fill handle and drag across, you can get some kind of a sequence. Okay, for calculations, this is the main thing that Excel is used for, is calculations. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to merge and center the title here. So I have calculations, and I need to be on the home tab. And the merge and center button is about midway, and it looks like something with arrows pointing in to the right and to the left. And when we click that, this will, I'm gonna undo that, which is Control-Z. Show you something else. Okay, when you want to merge and center, you have to select how far you want it to go. And this is called a range. A range is 2 or more cells. Contiguous ranges are when they're close together like this. And we have to set a range here because we don't want to go past the data. So if our data ended at D, we would stop at D. And if it was out at J, we would go all the way out to J. So then I will click this, and it's centered. And if any of you ever used a typewriter, I'm going to just put my name in here, and I'm going to center that one. You know how hard it was to center things on a typewriter. You had to go to the middle and backspace 1 for every two letters or numbers that you had. And you don't have to do that here. Excel will do that for you. And if you insert a column or delete a column, it's like on a rubber band. It will just snap back and still be centered. So that is really, really cool. Now, I'll show you another thing that you can do. I have this already set up so you didn't have to watch me typing. But if I select the headers, I could change the color. And there's a color thing here. And the default color is red. Default is what the system uses unless you change it. So if I hit the down arrow, I have all these different colors that I could choose from. So I'm just going to pick a blue. And notice that the streak is under the A is now blue, because that tells me that the last time I used this color, the last time I used a color, it was this color. And if I go into a brand new sheet, it's going to go back to red. So let's take a look at what we got here. You could pretend that this is kind of like a manager of a company, and he's got 4 locations. And these are the sales for the first quarter. Maybe, and there were sales in 100,000, and there was something written here that says they're 100,000. So you don't have to keep putting all 3 zeros here. But what he wants to know is what the total sales are for these 3 months. So what I'm going to do first, and this sometimes confuses my students, so I'm trying to make it more clear, is I'm going to show you what not to do, okay? Because your first inkling when you're in Excel would be to say, okay, I'm going to add 100 to 75 to 250. Okay, so I'm going to do that, but I'm going to show you why you shouldn't do it. Anytime, though, you want a calculation, you have to start with the equal sign. Okay, and that tells Excel that what comes next is a calculation. If you leave the equal sign out, what happens is when you press enter, you get what you typed instead of getting an answer. So I'm going to put in 100. I'm going to put in the plus. I'm going to put 75, put in a plus, and I'm going to put in 250, and then I'm going to hit enter. And like I said, if I left off the equal sign, when I hit enter, it would say 100 plus 75 plus 250, which you don't want. Okay, so that's 425. Okay, well, notice also when I'm in the cell, in the formula bar, it tells me the formula, but in here, it gives me the answer. So this is good for troubleshooting, because if I need to fix something, I can just go up here and insert something or delete something, and I don't have to start all over from scratch. The problem with that is somebody walks in and says, oh, you know what, 70, that's wrong. It shouldn't have been 75. It should have been 175. So if that happens, we have to change it here, 175. But every place it was that 75 was used, we would have to change it. So I would have to go up here, click in the middle, put in a 1, hit enter, or I can also hit the green check mark. This check mark is like enter, but it keeps me in the cell. If I hit enter, which I'm going to do, I will go down a cell. But if I hit the check mark, I would stay in there. So you can see I went down. Okay. But if I were to miss something that used that 75 that got changed to 175, then that could corrupt my whole set of data. Okay. It would make everything wrong because, I changed it here, but I would have to change it any place else that I used it. So that is not a great way of doing it. All right. So the second way that you can do it, if you only have 2 or 3 cells that you have to answer, is to use the actual cell addresses. All right. But I also have to start with an equal sign. And this is, I can point and click. So I click on the first cell. Now I'm responsible for putting in all the mathematical things. So I have to put in a plus. I can click on February. I can put in a plus. I can click on March. And you notice that what we're saying here is add the contents of cell B6 to the contents of cell C6 to the contents of cell D6. All right. And then I'm going to click the check mark and I'm still going to get that 525. But look what happens. Somebody comes in and says, oh, that 175 was supposed to be 75. So I can change it here. I can just type right over it. Watch the total sales when I do that. It automatically changes. So you would want to use the cell addresses for doing this. However, think about this. What if you had a sheet that had 70 or 80 columns? Now this can happen, okay? Do you really want to sit there and go B6 plus C6 plus D6, whatever like that? And then you get to the point where the phone rings and you forget where you are or you hit something wrong, and Excel knows that you might want to do this. So it's got an even better way than doing this. And you always want to be where your answer is. Okay. So up here and over on the right here is what we call the sum function. And this is the first function I'm going to show you today. So I'm going to click on it. And when I click on it, Excel goes shopping and tries to find a range. Okay. Because if I had done that and my numbers were down here or they were over here, they would also be highlighted by these marching ants. All right. So look up here and see what we've got. So this is a function. And in the parentheses, we have what's called arguments. And depending on the function that you use, it could have no arguments or it could have 3 or 4 arguments, depending on what it is. And if you read this in English, plain English, what it says is sum or add the contents of B6 through D6. So the colon here, it means everything between B6 and D6. So we only have C6, but if you were out in in column 100, or well, not the 100 because that's the row, in column say P6, and you selected this, you had your total at the end, and you clicked on it, this would say B6 through P6. Okay, so that saves you a lot of work. And again, if you changed any of the numbers, it would still work. Okay, so I could go and I could do that for each one of these things. But again, think big. What if you had a sheet that had 100 rows? Do you really want to be sitting here and doing the equal sum 100 times? And the answer is no, you wouldn't. At least I wouldn't. Okay, so Excel has a shortcut for that too. And that was that fill handle that I told you about. So you want to make sure that you would land on the fill handle, click and drag down like that. And if you can see, here's the one I set up. Here, now it's doing B7 through D7, B8 through D8, B9 through D9. Okay. Now, the reason that this works is we call this relative addressing. It works because Excel has no idea what's in these cells and it doesn't really care. What we've told it is add the cell 3 to the left to the cell 2 to the left to the cell 1 to the left. And if you think about it that way, then you know that it's 3 to the left, 2 to the left, 1 to the left. And that would also work all the way down to row 100. Okay, so let's take a grand total here just to show you that you see Excel. And you always want to check the range up here to make sure that it's correct. And I will show you on the next tab why that's important. But you can see the marching ants here, so we know that that's correct. So I'm going to click the check mark and we're all set. So a second function that I want to show you, and this is where you have to be careful with the range, is for average sales. Okay, so the manager of this group, not only does he want to know the total sales, but he wants to know what the average sales are for each of these. And basically what we're doing is we're taking the total sales. We're just taking an average of the 3 sales, but we're not going to use total sales because those numbers are there already. And the way you get to that is next to the sum function is a down arrow, and you have several other functions right here that you can use. So I'm going to click on average. And here we can see that this is incorrect because it's trying to get E6 on a 2. So I'm just going to click on the first one, and that breaks it, and just drag across until I get the 3 that I want. Then I'm going to hit check. And B6 through D6. Okay. And we don't want a percentage on there. So I'm going to, let's see. No, that's not working the way it's supposed to work. All right. This is because this is set up with a percentage and we just want it to be a number. Okay. Oop, I left that one out. Okay. So I will just go over this to make sure that it's okay. All right, there we go. And so we have our average sales here. If we wanted to take off the decimal points, we could go up here and there's an increased decimal and a decreased decimal. And so each time you hit it, it takes off a decimal point. But it will come out, average will come out with 2 decimal points automatically. But you don't want, if you don't want them, you don't have to have them. Okay. Okay. Next, what I want to show you is some of the other functions here. So on here, I have count. We've seen total. We've seen average. We're going to do minimum and maximum also. And these are all on that down arrow. So I'm going to click here, and this is going to be count numbers. Okay. So this only counts the number of cells that have numbers. Okay. It doesn't add up what's in the cells. It just counts. So you can see that we know the answer is 4, but I'll show you anyway. So we see that that's 4. If one of these numbers wasn't here, you see how it goes down to 3. So I'm going to do a Control-Z, which undoes what I just did because I want it in there. The way that I use this is in my teaching, we have an online grading center. And at the end of the semester, I have to make sure that I have posted grades for everybody. And so there's a way for me to download the grading file. And then what I do is I do a count and I go all the way across. And I know that it's supposed to be 28 because everybody's had 28 assignments. And if it doesn't say 28 across, then I have to go figure out where the blank cell is. And I say, oh, it was Joe Jones, and module 3, I forgot to do assignment 1. So I can go back into the grade book, and find his assignment and then fix it. Okay. So people use this sometimes when they have a parts file and they want to make sure that all the part information is in for every part. So you have a part here, and then you have, maybe 8 or 9 different things with the size and the weight and the color and all this stuff. And you could do this to make sure that it's all filled in. Because if it's a small sheet, you can just eyeball it. But, I have 30 students, and if they all have 28 assignments, it's a little bit harder to take a look and see, where the holes are. And if I'm lucky, when I do that and they all match, then, I'm all set, and then I can just hand in the grades. So we'll do total again. I'm going to click the auto sum. But now notice that it's picking up count, and we don't want that. So we have to break it and select it again. And this time I'm going to hit enter because I want to be in the next one. Okay, and that's the total. And so we'll do an average. Again, we have to set our own range here, and I'll hit enter. And these two I didn't talk about before. So minimum will tell you what the lowest number is. And some companies use that when they're putting in sales figures for their salesmen, and then they could do min and max to find out what the lowest and the highest sales are very easily. So I will click down here and I will select min. And again, I just want my 4 things here. Click OK. And 100. And again, any of these will change if any of these numbers change. Okay, and then I will click on max. And then I will select them. And there we go. Now, if you want to see what some of the other functions are, we're not going to do those today. But if you click this FX button here, it's an insert. Oh, you have to be in a blank cell too. Sorry. Okay, so it will tell you most recently used, but I want to tell you, even if you've never used this and you go in here, it's going to have a few things in here. So you can see all of them. You can do financial, date and time, math, and all of these different ones are in here. Some of which I have never used, so I don't know them. But if you pick on something, if you have it selected, and it will give you the syntax. So here's a function. These are the arguments. Okay. It tells you what it does. All right. You can get more help from online help from clicking this. And I'm just going to go into an and statement and show you. Okay. And then it would tell you, tells you whether the argument is true or what, and then you would have to figure that out. And then it just gives you all kinds of different information. And also, if you do something wrong, it will be in red over here instead of logical. So those are some of the things that you can play around with. There's 300. I probably know about 14. But if you work at a company that uses Excel a lot and they use some of the functions, they will normally tell you what the functions are, and how to use them. But again, you can always go out to online help, and it will not only tell you how to use it, but it will give you sample data that you can download and you can play around with it yourself. So there's a lot of training materials built into the help screens, which is very, very nice. So coming to our sample budget, because that's what the title of this class is really supposed to be, but you really can't get into that unless you have some information beforehand. So I have set this up, most of this up, so that you don't have to sit here and watch me type. All right. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a range, and I'm going to merge and center the title. And then I'm going to bold it just so it's a little bit more. And then if I want to make it a little bigger, there's some really cute little buttons here. I could go to downhill and change the font size if I want. On this button, though, what it does is it makes your font size a little bit bigger. Okay, so you can, every time you click it, you make it one bigger. This one makes it one smaller. Again, these are cute little shortcuts to know. So here we have income and expenses. Okay, and this is just a small button in a, made up the numbers. So this is a 3-month button about a budget. So I'm going to use the fill handle and do February and March here. Okay, so the first, and I'll do it here too before we go any further. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to add up the income for January, February, and March. And because, these 3 are the same, I have another shortcut that I can use. Instead of doing the first one and using the fill handle, I can select all 3, and then I can click the sum button, and they will all be in here, C4 through C5, D4 through D5. So we're only adding 2, but it works out very well to do it easily that way. And I can do the same thing with the total expenses down here. Okay. And then for net income, it's total income minus total expenses. And we don't have a function for that. That is straight subtraction. So I'm going to click the equal sign. All right. And then I'm going to click on total income here. And then I'm going to put the minus in. On my keyboard, it's next to the 0, but different keyboards are different, so you might have to look for it. And then I'm going to click total expenses down here. And then I'm going to hit the check mark. And so that is going to take the contents of C6 minus the contents of C16. And here I can use the fill handle and drag it across. So there I have my budget. So if you are doing a budget, you know, and if you only have one job, then you don't have to take a total. If you don't want to, you could just use that total. I just put in some expenses. You might have more or different. Okay. So now what I want to show you is maybe you want to see a chart of this. All right. So again, I'm going to start with what not to do and show you why it doesn't work. So let's say I'm going to select the data here. Now, I would definitely not select total expenses. If I wanted total expenses in a chart, I would do that separately, because just like when we were doing the functions, these numbers are already in here. And if you put total expenses in your chart, it's going to shoot way up because it's going to be a total of all the rest of this. So to get to the chart, you click on Insert, and you can use recommended charts if you want. And it shows you the different charts and how they're going to look. Or you can pick your own. So here I'm going to select a 2-column chart. Okay, so here comes a chart, and this chart does not tell me anything because, as you can see, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Series 1, Series 2, Series 3. So this is really no help at all. So I'm going to do a Control-Z, which is going to undo it. Okay, and the reason it came out like that is because I didn't put the labels in. So the labels are January, February, March, and the expenses that I have down here. So let's try that again. I'll click on Insert. I'll hit the 2D column. And that makes more sense. As you can see, that rent is it's a big thing here. But you can see that it comes out with every one of the expenses. And you can see that January is blue and February is red and March is ugly green. Okay, so there's a couple of things that you can do with this. Once you select the chart by clicking on it somewhere, you're going to get a different ribbon. Okay, and I'm going to go over elements after I move it, but you can change the color palette if you don't like these. You can change the style. And if you hit this down arrow here, you have all the styles. Sometimes you have, there's more than one row. In this case, there's only 2 rows, but if you hit the bottom one, it will open up everything at the same time. So you can actually point to these and they will show you different chart styles, and they won't go on there until you click it, but it gives you an idea. And change colors, so you can change the palette. Again, you can look at it without changing it. And if you click on it, it will change all the way down there. You can make everything purple if you like, all one color. But what I want to do is to show you that one of the things that you can do is to move this chart onto its own sheet. Okay, and we would do that. You have to make sure it's selected, because if it's not selected, we just go back to the normal ribbon. So you have to be in here, and then you click on Move Chart. Now, one of the problems here is if you click on Move Chart, you just click OK, nothing changes because you are already in an object and sample budget. So what you want to do is you want a new sheet, and then this is highlighted. So if you don't want to call it Chart 1, you can say My First Quarter Sheet. Okay. And now we are on my first Q sheet, and it's all by itself here. You can see A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, all that stuff went away. Okay. You still have your toolbar, so that, I'm sorry, your ribbon, so that you could still make changes here if you wanted. Another thing that you can do if you want is to switch the rows and columns automatically. So what this does is it shows you everybody but for January, everybody for February, everybody for March. Okay, and then I can switch it back if I want. So these are some of the things that you can do. And then if you didn't like this chart type, you could come in here and you could change it to any one of these things. And last on here, what I want to show you is the chart element, because there's different, depending on the chart that you're using, there's different elements. Like here, I could do data labels, and I could do outside end. And what that would do is show me the different numbers, that came from the chart. So I could do that if I want, I don't have to. Okay. We have a legend already. Legend just tells you, what the colors are. You could put different grid lines on if you want. Okay. So there's tons of things that you can do. And if you do something and you don't like it, if you just press Control Z undoes the last thing that you did. So you can play around a lot. Now, if it doesn't come out with a chart title, sometimes they do. If you click on them and you click up in the formula bar and you say, you put it in, it doesn't look like it's going there, but it is my quarter data. When you press enter, it changes it. Or you could click and drag over where it said chart title and just type it in there. This is hard for my students to get used to too, because they're going up here and they're expecting it to see it here, and you don't see it until you press enter. Okay, so another thing I want to show you on budgets is that Excel has a number of budgets templates built in. And what a template is it's just an outline of what you want to do. It will often have the formulas in there for you. It will have some of the labels in for you. And the way that you get to it is you have to be in Excel. You can be in any old spreadsheet that you want because you're really not using it. But what we do is we click on File, and then we click on New. And then where it says Search for Online Templates, I would type Budgets. And I'll hit Enter. And so there's a personal budget, a blue balance. There's all kinds of things. I'll just pull one up. You just click on it and you click, and it tells you, you know, and then it says about this template. But then you click on the personal monthly budget, and you would change these numbers. You can see that here's a sum function here, and then they get a little bit more complicated. And after you fill in all of these things, you know, they will fill them out for you. So that is the budget template. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is to show you what I would do for let's group these if I was doing a budget of my own. Okay. So let's say we're going to do January, February, and March. So I will group them by clicking on Control. And maybe I wanted to say my budget for month, and I wouldn't fill in the month. I would just leave it there because I don't want a month in here on all three of them. So after I'd ungroup it, I would put January, February, and March. But I could say income. Okay. And I could say job 1, job 2 if you have to. Okay. Now, unless you think you're going to get a raise, you could, in the next 3 months, you could put that stuff in there too. Maybe you knew you got a raise, and maybe you're doing this after the fact. Okay. Yeah. And maybe. Okay. So any information that's going to be the same for all 3 months could be in here. And then you could take a total. Okay. And we'll use that. Okay. And then for expenses, and so most expenses are, oops, I'm in the wrong spot here. Okay. Total, hit enter. Oh. Okay. All right. Oops. See, okay, let me go back here. I'm okay. Okay. So it said, I had done something wrong in the middle. So I don't want it to be under job 1 and job 2. So I'll put that in there. Okay. And notice that when I had an error, it came up to a help screen to try and help me figure it out. Okay. So expenses, and I'm not going to bore you by typing these all in. Okay. But we'll just say rent, utilities. And I notice that some of these things are coming out bold and some aren't. So we'll just bold everything here. Take it off and put it back on. Okay, food, transportation. All right, and I'll bold those. And notice that transportation is slopping over into column C. So the way that we make column B bigger is to go on this line between B and C, because when you're on the line, what it does is whatever you do goes to column B. It goes to the column on the left. So I'm just going to click on I'm going to double click on that, and that's going to make the column 1 character wider than the widest character. And this is really helpful if you have something that's way off the screen, you know, more than 21 lines. It's going to do that even if the widest column is like maybe down in column B35 or something, it's still going to do that. So then we'll say, let's leave it at that. Okay, so you know that your rent isn't going to go up at all, so we can put that in. Okay. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a total down here. And I'm going to put this in, and here's where you have to watch it because it just went up here. Well, that's okay, but you just want to watch it. And sometimes it gets goofy, but C7 through C11, you know, that's fine. And if we wanted to leave some more lines here and put the total farther down, we could also do that. Okay, so then maybe for net income or net worth. All right, so we're going to do our subtraction. So I'm going to put in an equal sign, and I'm going to take my total here minus my total here. And even if these numbers are wrong, all right, it doesn't matter because as you fill them in, the numbers will change. So if I said, okay, food was $120, notice when I put that in, the total changes and the net worth changes. So you can do that. Now, I also noticed that I spelled budget wrong. So if I click on here, I can just go up here. It's just like word processing, stick in a G, hit enter, and I'm all set. And then if I wanted to, I could, if I want, you know, I wouldn't have to, but if I wanted to merge and center this, I could make it a little bigger, make it bold. Okay. And so now if I ungroup these, okay, so I have that here. See, on this would be January, this would be February, this would be March. And I have all the stuff in here that's going to be the same all the way through. And then I would go back in here and put in utilities, transportation, all the rest of that stuff for January, for February. And I could come up here and go up here and say January. I spelled that right? Yeah. And then here, I could just click on this and say February. And notice that when I merge and center, this is now a jumbo A1. We don't have a B1, C1, D1, and E1 anymore. And if you do that and you don't want it, all you do is click this button and it will go back to the way it was before. So you're all set on that. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is a sheet that if you would like to have this sheet, and I put my email out and I'm going to put it out again. It's at the bottom of this sheet. But I put together a tips and tricks for people when they take this class. And it goes over some of the stuff that we did. And it also has a little more information. So we have parts of the screen, rows, columns, and cells, how to add a button to the quick access toolbar, how to delete a button from the quick access toolbar, a little of some hints on charting. Be sure that you use labels. Don't use your totals. And if you want it on a separate sheet, don't use cut and paste because that's not going to take away the column letters and the row numbers. Okay. So you want to make sure that the column is the chart is selected and that you hit move. And we will have time for questions. So I will come back to you. Okay. For grouping, virtual carbon paper. Okay. It keeps a consistent look to all sheets in the group. And when you type on one sheet of the group, it goes on all of them. And you can add your formulas. And here's how to ungroup it. And remember, when you're doing specific data to ungroup them, I forgot to do that once. And I was taking out things left and right. Some keyboard shortcuts. Okay. I had put spelling on the QA toolbar. But what I use is the function 7 key. That's the F7 key. On my keyboard, it's on over the numbers. If you're on a laptop, you might have to hit another button besides just the F7. So keyboards are all different. So I can't tell you exactly what would happen on yours. We didn't go over absolute and relative, but if you get into that later, the function 4 key will make it absolute. Control B will bold, Control I will italicize, C will copy, V is paste. We can't use P for paste because we're using it for print, okay? But if you think of Velcro, then you know, sticking your hands together like a V, that was how I was taught to remember it many years ago. Okay, so if you want some more information, or you're trying to learn how to do something, and I have used this many times, you know, even recently, but Google searching, if you set up your Google search correctly, you will get really good answers. Okay, so if you're using, now I used Excel 365 for this demo, but Excel 216, Excel 219 will all work with everything that I did for you today. There are very few changes in the basic stuff. But if you want to do a, like if you wanted to know how to modify a chart, you could say Excel 2016 or Excel 365, how to modify a chart, all right? Because if you don't put in the version, you are going to get an answer for every single Excel version that's ever been put out there. Because unfortunately, people don't take off things often. And you could wind up, you know, using Excel, something for Excel 2013, and it wouldn't be the same, okay? So if you use 13, 16, 19, or Excel 365, when you put it in there, you will lower the amount of answers that you get. Now, by adding how to your search, you often get a tech board where somebody has asked that question, and then underneath the question is the answer. So if you just put in Excel 2016, modify a chart, you may get a whole bunch of ads on buying stuff to go with Excel, and you will get, you know, you will get answers, but this way you can streamline your answers so you don't have so much stuff to wade through. Okay, so depending on your version, you know, try and put that in. Also, where to find some good videos. Okay, GCFlearnfree.org. There's a link. I have Excel 2013 here, but I said most of the basic stuff is the same. But there is a link once you get in there for Office 365 now. Okay, it wasn't in there right away. This is very good because they walk you through something and they talk about it. And if you want to, you can download the transcript so that you know what they said. And also they will allow you to download the file that they used. Okay. Also, YouTube gives you some videos. And again, use the same how-to from up here if you're going to do YouTube. Okay. Support.office.com. Click on training, and there's a lot of training out there on the Microsoft site now. Okay. How to use the templates. Open an Excel file, then select File New. In the search box, type in budgets, and then select the one you want to use. Now, there is also some online classes. The library does have a subscription to Lynda, L-Y-N-D-A. It's a great, they have some really great training. And also Excel University, .com training /com/training is good. Okay. Local colleges often have Excel different levels of the classes. Wabansie, College of DuPage, Elgin Community College are the ones that I know about. But all you have to do is go up to a college catalog and look. Many of them have like online classes for people who work during the day. You know, so if you're not going for a degree, you can just take those classes. Okay. If you're interested in private training, ctstraining.com. They have sites in Warrenville, Schaumburg, and Northbrook. The Warrenville one is right off of Route 88. You will have to throw money here, but they're one-day training, and you get a book, you know, that has everything that you did, and then you can go online to their practice files. And if you're not happy with the class that you took, you can retake it for free within 6 months of when you took it. I taught there for a couple of years, and all the teachers are Microsoft certified, so you're getting good teachers. So if you would like a copy of this file and or the practice file, again, my email address is Susan. Remember, there's a Z in there. .spitzberg@rasmussen.edu. Okay. And now I'm going to come back here and see if I can answer any questions for you. So either you can unmute yourself or type in the chat.
Okay, I unmuted.
Okay. So what can I help you
Can you
with?
just show what you did to group again? I just missed that.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can get out of here again. Okay.
Or if you just tell me.
No, I'll show
Oh,
you.
okay.
I'll just, okay, let me just start a new file here. Oh, won't let me, all right. It's not letting me in here. Let me see if I can start. All right, let me stop sharing and starting. For some reason, it's not letting me share again. Okay. We didn't want that one. All right, let's see. All right, so, okay, so here I have 3 things, okay, and, okay, no, that's not gonna work. All right, never mind. I'm gonna put in a sheet here, and I'm gonna put in a sheet here, okay? So now
Okay.
okay, so I click on the first sheet, and I hold down my control key, and I click on my second sheet, and I click on my third sheet.
Control key.
Control key. Okay, now, as an added bonus, let me ungroup these and show you something else that you can do. If
So
you
now how
had,
did you ungroup?
I right-clicked and I selected ungroup. Okay, I can't do
Oh,
that.
okay.
Okay, yeah, okay. Now, if you have a ton of sheets, all right, that you want to group, okay, instead of using the control key, you can click on the first, and they have to be next to each other. In other words, this won't work for 1, 2, and 3, you know.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, but if you click on the first one and you hold down the shift key and you click on the last one, it will do everything in between.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to ungroup. I right click and select ungroup. So if I wanted to do 1 and 2 here, I would do control for that one, control for that one, and then I'm not doing the ones that are in between. So anything that I put on here is going to go in sheet 1, sheet 2, and sheet 3, but it's not going to go in 5, 4, and 6.
So this you're using mostly to set up headers and that kind of stuff.
Yes,
And
exactly.
basic stuff that's every month.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And here, because I have some sheets that are not grouped, I can ungroup by just clicking one of those sheets. I don't have to right click and select ungroup. I can just click on one of those and the sheet will go away.
Okay.
Okay. Very good
Okay.
question.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else that I see that there's a chat. Let me see if I can get in here. No, that's what's left over. All right. Hold on. Okay. All right. I thought I had a chat, but I don't. Anybody else have a question that I can answer or show you something? Nope. Okay. Well, like I said, if you want either or both of the files, just drop me an email and, I'll send it as an attachment. And okay. And Elliot, he's from the library. He's also going to put the video up on YouTube because I have been recording it. So what you can do if you want to, what some people do is request the file from me and then do the video. And as the video is going, do the steps that I do in it on the sheet that you have downloaded. Now you do I have to remind you that you do have to have Excel on your PC for that to work. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording.